Welcome to the Explainer. So let's just dive right in, because today we are unpacking a really massive systemic shift in basic education. We are looking closely at the Department of Education's Order No. 009 series of 2026. This policy is a complete game changer. It marks a fundamental transition from the traditional four-quarter school year that we're all used to over to a brand new three-term school calendar. Whether you're an educator trying to figure out how to plan your syllabus, an admin reorganizing school operations, or a parent wondering, how this actually impacts your child's learning journey, well, this explainer is designed to give you a crystal clear breakdown of exactly what to expect. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover why change the calendar, meet the three-term structure, starting strong with the opening block, focus learning in the instructional block, wrapping up with the end of term, and finally, prioritizing mastery and wellness. Let's get to it. Section 1. Why change the calendar? Solving fragmented learning. So, why fix something if it isn't completely broken, right? Well, a deep review of the old four-quarter system revealed some pretty serious structural limitations. And honestly, if you're a teacher, you know the feeling all too well. Frequent class disruptions that just compress your actual teaching time, those constant quarterly breaks, and these rapid-fire assessment cycles that really just fragment the kids' learning continuity, not to mention the heavily burdened teacher workload. By contrasting all of that with the new three-term system, the targeted solutions become super obvious. We are looking at longer, much more coherent academic terms. This allows for deeper mastery of the material, a lot more deliberate pacing of your lessons, and crucially, way fewer transitions that totally disrupt the flow of the school year.
Section 2. Meet the three-term structure, the macro view.
All right, let's take a look at the big picture. Here is your high-level timeline for school year 2026 to 2027. We kick things off with Term 1 starting on June 8, 2026. Then, once that first term wraps up, Term 2 begins right in mid-September. We'll cross over the new year, and Term 3 starts up in early January 2027, which eventually leads us right into the end of school year break beginning in April 2027. It's essentially a really clean, easily navigable map for the entire academic year. And the policy actually outlines a very precise breakdown of the days. Term 1 spans exactly 60 days. Term 2 covers 65 days, and Term 3 contains 67 days. I want you to notice the equitable distribution of time here. We aren't rushing through some frantic 40-day quarter just to meet an arbitrary deadline anymore. Every single term is given the breathing room necessary to actually teach, assess, and recover learning. Section 3. Starting strong. Opening block. Setting the foundation. Okay, the crucial takeaway here is that this opening block happens only once a year, right at the very start of Term 1, and it's strictly 4 to 5 days long. The policy intentionally dedicates this chunk of time entirely to beginning of school year, or BOSY, readiness. Instead of jumping immediately into formal lessons while the kids are literally still figuring out where to sit, schools are going to spend this time generating baseline data through assessments like CRLA and RMA, conducting mandatory health screenings, hosting parent orientations, and just focusing on community building. It means you get to build those essential learner profiles without the massive immediate pressure of curriculum delivery. Section 4. Focused learning. Instructional block. The protected zone. Now, the policy tone shifts here and gets incredibly strict, but for a really good reason. For 55 to 62 days per term, this block is walled off. It is literally a protected zone to minimize non-academic disruptions. This is pure engaged teaching time fully aligned with the prescribed learning competencies. But what's really cool is what's securely embedded inside this zone. The ARAL Program. That's the Academic Recovery for Accessible Learning. Schools are now mandated to schedule 30 to 60 minutes of ARAL remediation sessions right during this block to directly tackle foundational skills and learning gaps while the term is actually happening, not just as an afterthought. 201. That is the total number of class days in the 2026-2027 school year. I really want to highlight this number because the vast majority of these 201 days are securely locked into those protected instructional blocks we were just talking about. The priority is loud and clear. Time spent in the classroom should actually be spent learning. And speaking of protecting instructional time, let's talk about the number 2. Under this totally revamped calendar, the assessment burden is massively, and I mean massively, reduced. Teachers are now only required to administer 2 teacher-developed summative assessments before the final term examination. It's a huge, deliberate shift away from endless, exhausting testing, moving us much closer toward true student mastery. Section 5. Wrapping up. End of term. Transition and rest. So every single term neatly caps off with an 8 to 10 day end of term block. Think of this period as a pressure release valve. It is specifically engineered to absorb all those administrative and recovery tasks that historically always ended up disrupting your regular teaching schedule. Let's actually break down what happens in those 10 days because it's highly structured. Specific days are explicitly allocated for the final push of the ARL program, the actual computation of grades, and the distribution of report cards. But here's the absolute best part. Teachers finally have dedicated, completely protected time for in-service training or in-set without having to juggle their classroom duties at the exact same time. The schedule literally maps out when you grade, when you train, and when you rest.
Section 6. Prioritizing Mastery and Wellness. Impacts on Educators.
Listen to this. The policy strictly defines a wellness break. This isn't just a suggestion, it is a legally mandated scheduled period within that end-of-term block where all, and I truly mean all, academic, instructional, and administrative duties are completely suspended. It is a real bona fide break. Learners get a 4-day wellness break for asynchronous reflection, and teachers are guaranteed a 2-day wellness break where they cannot, under any circumstances, be assigned extracurricular or administrative work. At its core, the policy design genuinely aims to directly address educator workload. We're talking reduced assessment cycles to finally free up your weekends, and coherent lesson sequencing guided flexibly by the new budget of work rather than those incredibly rigid daily quotas of the past. Plus, teachers have 32 hours of annual insets securely locked in during the end-of-term blocks, right alongside that official 2-day wellness break per term. We are completely contrasting the old, fragmented burnout model with a newly rationalized, highly organized, and honestly much more humane workload. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a pretty provocative thought. Considering the entire structure we've just unpacked together, how will this reliably protected instructional time, combined with intentional, legally mandated rest, transform your daily teaching and learning experience next school year? This shift from 4 quarters to 3 terms isn't just a minor scheduling tweak, right? It's a fundamental reprioritization of how we value time, mastery, and human well-being in our schools. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack DepEd Order 009, and I really encourage you to dive into the official issuances to start planning your absolute best school year yet.